This is the SFFaudio Podcast.
This is Jesse.
And I'm Scott. Rick.
And I'm Rick.
There you go.
The Time Traveler.
All right, the Time Traveler is with us today. He has plumbed the depths of time to be with us today, so we really appreciate it.
He's not the time plumber.
The Time Plumber? Oh,
I'm not sure. It's kind of like the time doctor. You know?
Sometimes the time machine gets backed up and I have to get the plunger out. So.
Uh-oh.
It's a very small, very small.
Heck yeah.
We'll stop there.
So
what's going on, guys?
Not much. So talk to us about your podcast.
Oh, the podcast.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
The Time Traveler show's been around for a few years now, and it seems to come in and out goes in these little brief pod fades and comes back. Well, brief. If 6 months is brief. To a time traveler, it is.
Mm-hmm.
And what we have on the show is usually vintage fiction, science fiction, read by a guest reader. I usually do a little bit of hosting, talking about the stuff before it comes on. And we've had some great guest readers. And right now I've been kind of alternating the shows with a vintage recording of a famous science fiction author. Like I've had Arthur C. Clarke, Isaac Asimov, Jack Williamson, Fred Pohl have all been on the show. And the fiction has ranged from Philip K. Dick, Mac Reynolds, from the very famous to the lesser famous.
Yeah.
Very solid authors.
Very good stuff.
And
yeah,
some of the readers I've had on the show have been like Scott Brick and William DeFries. So I've gotten some really top-notch talent.
And Mark Douglas Nelson, too.
Mark Douglas Nelson and Sam Mowry and just some really good readers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. You bet. Good podcast. Yeah, I loved your the podcast that came out after Arthur C. Clarke passed away. That was very well done and very much appreciated.
Well, thank you. That one did turn into a project.
You bet.
But it was really cool because I got to contact Stefan Rudnicki and Scott Brick, and of course they sent me sound files that were included in the show. So, plus Arthur C. Clarke was on that show from Old World Con, and yeah, it ended up turning out really nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, and you also run Wonder Audio. So, yeah, give us a brief summary of what that is.
Well, Wonder Audio actually predates the podcast by a little bit, chronologically speaking. And what it is vintage, unabridged science fiction, also mysteries pretty soon. And the podcast was kind of added on to promote the Wonder Audio titles, but the majority of them are different than what comes out on the podcast. There's a couple that were so good on the podcast I did release as Wonder Audio titles. And so far, I think we got 24 titles up at Audible, and Mark Douglas Nelson and William Kuhn has read a number of them, as well as William DeFries and Stefan Rudnicki and some really fine narrators.
Oh, yeah, Matt Kelly does a couple too.
Yeah, Matt Kelly's really good. He's local. He's one I actually bring into my house to record, so those are a lot of fun.
Well, that's neat. Yeah, and these are really neat titles, too. Scanners Live in Vain by Grahame-Smith. That's one. And got some Fritz Leiber.
Yep.
It's great. I'm just kind of flipping through here. Sheckley, Robert Sheckley. Love Robert Sheckley. That's a great thing.
Yeah, those are really good. Those are the novel, The Status Civilization, I need to get into your guys' hands.
That's great.
Really fun novel. In fact, I got to get a lot of those titles into your hands.
So where can someone get some of these titles?
You can go to audible.com/wonderaudio, or you can go to the Wonder Audio website, wonderaudio.com.
Okay.
And just click on the link that says audiobook downloads or audiobook something. Audiobook titles.
All right.
And I've also been started publishing ebooks a lot, which...
Oh, no kidding. I didn't know that.
Yeah. they're available at FictionWise, and I just got them up on Amazon, so you can download them for the Kindle now.
Oh, neat.
And if you go to wonderaudio.com and look at the link for ebooks, there's links to the places that sell those.
Okay. That is cool. So what are you doing on ebook here?
Edio. Yeah.
Some of the titles.
It's public domain stuff, I guess, or?
The majority of it is, yeah.
Okay.
Some of it I had to get the rights. But
Frank Herbert and Andre Norton and Jack Williamson and Philip K. Dick. Great. Wow.
Isaac Asimov and Alfred Bester, Robert Bloch.
That Alfred Bester, man, that's one of the best recordings I've ever heard.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that was Pat Bottini.
Yep. Excellent guy. Excellent reader.
Yeah, atypical kind of. He's not your classic kind of narrator.
I think he's awesome.
He's got that little waver in his voice, and for that one, it would just fit so well because he's kind of got that,
you can't pin him down.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. What's going on here? And he sounds kind of crazy, so it works out really well.
It works. He's a crazy narrator, and it's a crazy story.
Crazy man. Yeah. Crazy man.
Those are my favorite kind.
Yeah. You bet. Okay.
Awesomeness.
Yeah.
Okay, before we go any farther, I got to tell you the coolest book I'm looking forward to. It's coming up. It's not related to Wonder Audio. But
let's talk about it then.
Yeah, you guys can get behind this. I'm pretty sure. I'm going to send you a link to it. It's the first link on the list here. I think you're both going to want to special order this just like me. Wait, that's Rick. And where's Scott?
I'm right here.
No, I can't find you. All right. There we go. On the Sumerian website, look at the first link. The first.
Oh my God!
Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Nice.
By Jane Austen and Seth Grahame-Smith.
Wow.
It's the original text of Pride and Prejudice done up with zombies. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies features the original text of Jane Austen's beloved novel with all new scenes of bone-crunching zombie action. As our story opens, a mysterious plague has befallen the quiet English village of Merton, and the dead are returning to life. Feisty heroine, Elizabeth Bennet, is determined to wipe out the zombie menace, but soon she's distracted by the arrival of a haughty and arrogant Mr. Darcy, What ensues is a delightful comedy of manners with plenty of civilized sparring between the two young lovers, and even more violent sparring on the blood-soaked battlefield as Elizabeth wages war against the hordes of flesh-eating undead, complete with 20 illustrations in the style of C.E. Brock, the original illustrator of Pride and Prejudice. This insanely funny expanded edition will introduce Jane Austen classic to legions of new fans. Doesn't that sound like the most awesome book ever?
Yeah.
That's funny.
I even like the cover.
Yeah. You see the classic cover of a Victorian lady with her skin missing
off.
All right, and this is at the Sumerian.com.
Yeah, it's from Chronicle Books, which I've always found they're sort of they make really slick looking books, lots of art books, lots of not so much well known from my perspective anyways as a publisher of fiction, but they do a lot of sort of offbeat beautiful stuff. It's a San Francisco based publisher.
But this is not an audiobook, right?
No, and it sure should be. Somebody should get in there.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's coming out in April.
Yeah, that looks crazy. Yeah, I'd definitely read some of it for sure.
It makes me want to read right before regular Pride and Prejudice, and then go in and read it again. And I'm thinking this is the most brilliant idea, because there's lots of books out there that you sort of you should probably read it. You sort of wanted to read it, but you've lacked that final push to get you to read it. Like War and Peace, really good book, but War and Peace and Martians, that would be like, wow, yeah, let's go for that.
Oh wow!
There's got to be a whole line of classic books that you just need a little extra push to get you into it.
Sure.
Yeah, I've got one arrival to talk about.
Go for it.
One more arrival. Ken Scholl's first novel, Lamentation, from Macmillan Audio. Mm-hmm. It's read by Scott Brick, William DeFries, Maggie Meg Reed, and Stefan Rudnicki. It's a fantasy. So it's an epic fantasy. Ken Scholes is a wonderful short story writer. I encourage everybody to check out Edward Bear and the Very Long Walk. It's episode 146 of Escape Pod. That's just a really great story. But anyway, this one's fantasy. That one's science fiction. Here's the description of Lamentation. An ancient weapon has completely destroyed the city of Windweir. From many miles away, Rudolfo, lord of the 9 forest houses, sees the horrifying column of smoke rising. He knows that war is coming to the named lands. Nearer to the devastation, a young apprentice is the only survivor of the city. He sat waiting for his father outside the walls and was transformed as he watched everyone he knew die in an instant. Soon, all the kingdoms of the named lands will be at each other's throats as alliances are challenged and hidden plots are uncovered. Here we go. It's the first of 5 novels.
A series.
Another fantasy series, yeah. But yeah, Ken Scholes is a remarkable short story writer, like I said, so I'm anxious to check it out.
Oh. It's a multicast reading.
Yeah.
What do you think of those, Jesse?
They can be good. They can be good. It's a lot more work. I'm wondering, so Stefan Rudnicki, I'm looking at the list. This is a recent arrival, and it says, the Margaret Weason, Tracy Hickman one is read by Stefan Rudnicki, Bones of the Dragon, and then Lamentations read by a whole bunch of people. I'm wondering how they make the decision, because I've not heard of either of these novels prior to these releases. Mm-hmm. How do they make the decision?
Bones of the Dragon is brand new. We talked about that last week, but it's a brand new first novel of a new series by Weiss and Hickman. I know with a lot of the stuff that Rudnicki and his shop do, if there are clear changes in point of view in the writing, I don't know. I can't say that he always does this or that they always do this, but
no, they don't always.
Yeah, but if there's clear changes in point of view throughout the book, you can use different narrators for those, and I really like that. But you need to make sure that all your narrators are competent, right? Mm-hmm.
Well,
they all have to be good. Yeah, and that's not a problem with these guys. But
only one I don't know is Maggie Meg Reed.
We should also make clear that the multi-voice reading, there's almost 2 different. We need 2 terms, and I'm not sure how you differentiate. But one is an audiobook in which you have the multiple narrators reading different characters throughout the whole novel, and then the other method of a multi-narrator reading is when you have narrators read sections of the novel. And that's the way that these normally are. I don't know if Lamentation is that way, but I suspect that it is. That if a section of the novel is told from one character's point of view, that section is read by one narrator. And then if the next section of the book is told from another point of view, it's read by a different narrator. Mm-hmm. I know there are some books that I wish had been done that way, like Game of Thrones.
That'd be long sections.
Each chapter of each chapter of a Game of Thrones is from a different character's point of view, and all those Song of Ice and Fires are like that. It would have been
actually would have been a very good idea.
Yeah, it would have been really good to select narrators for each character and then read just those chapters by those narrators. I think that would have made it very interesting. Not that it wasn't anyway, but it would have made it more interesting.
No, I think that would have been. No.
I have mixed feelings about the multiple narrators like that. Sometimes, it all depends on the book.
Wonder Audio hasn't done any, has it?
No. Unless there's clear distinctions, like it's different first persons that are alternating, I find it a distraction usually. Of course, sometimes it fits nicely with the book, but a lot of times it's like, it pulls me out of the book because I'm thinking, why did they switch narrators here? And I've abandoned more than one of those just because I've become too distracted with changing the narrators.
Have you heard the Ender's Game?
No.
No? Okay. That's probably the one that convinced me that it could really work. And then the other one to try is the full cast audio, which is
I was going to
basically
mention
a stage play.
I was going to mention full cast audio because full cast audio, it's a different style, and they use characters or they use different actors to portray each character in the novel. So every time a character says something, no matter what the point of view of the narrative is, that character says those lines. And I got to tell you, I absolutely hated those. I mean, everyone that we got into SFFaudio was practically unlistenable in my opinion. Because, I'm serious. I'm not talking about full cast audio. Full cast audio is brilliant.
Oh.
Full cast audio is wonderful, and they just completely changed my mind on that. But normally what you'd have is, somebody would say a line in anger, and then the narrator would say, he said anger.
He said in anger.
Yeah, and that would just drive me insane. I just didn't want to hear it. But full cast audio, I don't have that problem with. Full cast audio, maybe it's because of the quality of the narration, and the ones that we were getting in before were not of high quality. But full cast audio, I wholeheartedly recommend anything by full cast audio without any reservation.
Yeah.
But yeah, they changed my mind on that.
Well, if you read it in the back of the cover, sometimes they say they remove the taglines because they are kind of stupidly redundant. They have he said angrily.
I think that they're almost redundant in any audiobook that isn't just a straight reading. Even if it's one narrator. If you got a narrator that is doing characterization, the attributives are not always needed. And
if it's well written, it probably doesn't need it. Yeah.
Right.
It's only there to remind you.
Sure.
I know that there's some exceptions to that style. If you've ever heard or read a Elmore Leonard book, he loves to use said. But he doesn't really even use names. He just says he said, she said, right? And it becomes transparent even when you're listening to it because it's like it's a beat. It's like a ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba, he said. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba, she said. And it's like a pattern to give you a style, a feeling of how he writes. And a lot of his stuff is very dialogue driven. It really works well, even in audio. But he's very, very careful to place it only where it's appropriate to create that style in your head, and it becomes completely transparent. You don't even notice it's there, except that you're enjoying it.
Yeah, most of the writing advice that I've gotten over the years has always said you just want to say said. They don't want to say he exclaimed or anything like that, because that sticks out like a sore thumb, especially in audio. I think it does anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, especially adding the adverbs too, like angrily and,
You bet. Yeah. Yeah, and there is, like while we're talking about this, there is different styles of narration too, even if it's a single narrator. You have narrators that are really just reading the text to you, and then you've got narrators that are performing the text to you. And I guess it's hard to say what I prefer, because if the performer is good, like say Jim Dale from Harry Potter, if the performer is good, yeah, let him perform. But
yeah.
And a person who does a straight reading can get boring in a longer book.
Sure. Yeah. Different styles for different books is always a good way to, it all depends on the book, and we get different versions of the same book that come out. We listen to them, and they have different approaches, And, both of them can have merit for the same book. It's not necessarily there's one right way to do something.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And then there's Jim Dale, who does a phenomenal job, but his Hermione is kind of cracked me up.
Yeah.
Like, Harry!
Harry! Yeah.
It kind of made me laugh every time I heard it by the time I got to the last.
Yeah. Yeah, Stephen Fry read the Harry Potter audiobooks in the UK, and he's a different style narrator. He's absolutely excellent. I'm not sure why, Jim Dale got lots of recognition for that. Probably just maybe Stephen Fry did in the UK too, but he's a different style of reader.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's kind of strange. Why would they have? They both have British accents.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why. Yeah.
Different.
Well, you know what? I do know why. Because they edited the UK version of the Harry Potter books for the United States audience, and they're minor edits. But an obvious thing is the title of the first book is The Sorcerer's Stone in the United States, and The Philosopher's Stone in the UK. Because they probably don't think we like philosophers in the United States. I don't know why.
No, it's
but the things I actually took the first book
as related to fantasy.
Uh-huh.
Right? Sorcerer's Stone is not there's no actual thing called the Sorcerer's Stone.
Mm-hmm.
However, there is this thing called the Philosopher's Stone, but it doesn't indicate fantasy. So they didn't keep the name. That's the only one they changed the.
Yeah, the only one they changed the title
of.
Yeah.
But they also took out all the lorries that are in this story and replaced them with trucks.
Yeah.
Because obviously you can't figure out what a lorry is.
Right, and that's what I was.
You're too stupid because you're an American. What a stupid system to change the books.
I know.
I think that's pathetic.
I agree. And there are minor things like that. If you listen to the first chapter, which I did because I was wondering what was different, and
Make Harry Potter American and set it in New York. That's so stupid.
I recall the candy that Dumbledore likes in the first scene of the first book is lemon sherbet or something in the British version, and then it's something else, like a lemon drop or something. I can't recall exactly in the American one.
Yeah, American kids just would never be able to figure that out.
Yeah, and I was
so
very
annoying.
disappointed. So that's why you've got to have two versions of the audiobook, because one is British and one is American.
The paper book up here is the same as the UK version, but the audiobook is the same as the American version.
Oh, interesting.
I never knew that.
Yeah. Different publisher of the paper book, same publisher of the audiobook.
Yeah.
For here.
Yeah. Hey, another thing I'd like to bring up today is, we're talking about narrators in audiobooks, but what about the book itself? Wouldn't you agree that some books should not be made into audio? And if so, what's the criteria?
No picture books.
No picture books, right?
Comic books really suck too as audiobooks.
Well, there is one publisher who does a lot of that.
Uh-huh.
Well, I'm not talking about dramatizations. Well, those are different. They're written for audiobooks and for books.
Well, they're based on a comic book, though.
Well,
no, those are novels. Those are novels written based on comic books.
Those are based on a series, like a 6 months of comics or something, like some sort of how in the summer they do like Crisis on Infinite Earth or something like that. Uh-huh. A lot of those are like that.
Oh, I thought those were novels.
Well, I think they are novelized after.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
They're based on little runs, to make you buy comics in the summer or whatever.
Huh.
They have one every year, basically, at Marvel. And DC, too, I think.
Mm.
Marvel's a little more crazy for it, but... Yeah.
Well, I've got one example that leaps to mind is Anathema.
Okay.
Okay. Don't you? I don't know. That book just doesn't seem audioable to me. It would be okay on the second read.
Because
maybe it's just long books.
No, because it's complex. So it's almost like the reading, with your eyes, somehow that works, but in audio, you're like, now what is he talking about now? And I tried to listen to Anathem, and I have not finished it. I haven't gone any farther than the last time I talked about it. But what makes that not working on an audiobook? It's very well read. Bill DeFries is one of the readers. It's got a few different readers. But the section that I read was all Bill DeFries. I never changed narrators that I recall. But I don't know.
But sometimes you do, when you're reading a text, you can back up and you go, what the hell is he talking about? Where audio is much harder to do that, obviously. I never do it myself.
Uh-huh.
Unless it's like all the way to the beginning of the chapter or something, because I wasn't paying attention. But, and things that lack dialogue, like for 45 minutes to an hour, and there's no dialogue between characters, those can be pretty tough audiobooks to listen to, too.
Well,
sure, that's a good point.
There's exceptions to that. All the H.P. Lovecraft stuff's that way,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and that works really well.
Yeah,
when Wayne June
part of my
does it
problem
anyways.
with H.P. Lovecraft, I think.
So,
have
Jesse,
you heard the Wayne June
is your
versions?
theory then, Jesse, that just about any book can be made into an audiobook? It's just finding the right style.
I think there's something to that. The example I would say is, if you've read the paper book version of The Demolished Man, you can see that there are some things in there that would obviously not easily lend themselves to representation in audio. There's playing on the page, the layout, and whole names use special cases, special, the @ symbol and such. It wouldn't obviously lend itself well to audio, except it does, and it works perfectly. But by the same token, what you're saying with Anathem, maybe it's better for re-listening, once you've read it.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps that's true. When I read Demolished Man, I read it first in paper and then enjoyed it audio after. But I think basically it's like saying, you shouldn't. Some books shouldn't be adapted to Braille. I just don't think there's that much difference if they're words.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It might be that the way you sit down and read Anathem is not the way you sit down and normally read a regular book. And maybe that's the problem, is you're treating an audiobook the way you would treat a regular short novel, which is, you consume it over a space of a week or so. And it doesn't seem like anybody can do that with Anathem. It's just too long.
Yeah.
Not sure.
I'm sitting here looking up The Demolished Man on audio. I didn't even know it existed on audio.
Yeah, out of the UK.
Out of the UK, huh? Wow.
Yeah.
I'd love
really
to hear
Is
that.
it on Audible?
I don't think it's on Audible. No, I've got it on cassette.
Is it unabridged?
Yep, it's amazing.
Wow.
That's a good deal.
Yeah, the one that isn't done by him is the other one.
So Starts My Destination?
Yeah. I believe it may be out now, but I haven't got it. And it's only out in the UK if it is out.
Yeah, that's an excellent. Those both are a couple of my favorites.
Oh, yeah, they're wonderful.
Amazing book.
Yeah.
So, speaking of narrators, I've been listening to, the Dean Koontz Phantoms, and I just suddenly realized, about more than halfway through the book now, I realized who the narrator reminds me of. And it's really funny now when I'm listening to it, I'm thinking he's totally like this guy, and he totally reminds me of Mel Blanc. When you're a kid and you're watching all those, I guess it's Warner Brothers? Yeah, Warner Brothers cartoons. Mm-hmm. You don't realize that it's all the same guy when you're a little kid. It's like one guy talking himself performing everything, right?
Elmer Fudd.
Yeah, Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny and
every
character.
He didn't do Elmer Fudd. That was a different guy.
What?
Yeah, Mel Blanc didn't do Elmer Fudd, except in the later ones, which are a horrible Elmer Fudd.
Really?
He couldn't do Yep, it's a different guy.
I didn't know that.
Wow.
You learn something every day, yeah.
So is that Michael Kramer?
No, it's not. It's a guy I'd never heard before.
Huh.
It's Buck Scherner. And I'm really liking him, but it's striking. He actually has sort of a Mel Blanc-esque voice, and he does he does a lot of voices, a lot of changes to his voice, like Mel Blanc does, to distinguish between accents and ages and that sort of thing. But once you key into the fact that it's just one guy plus Elmer Fudd, you would say, oh, that's all the same guy. And sometimes it's more noticeable than others, right? When Mel Blanc does Bugs Bunny, it's you don't even think of him as Mel Blanc, but you can sort of see he's got maybe 7 or 8 other voices that he can apply to just about anyone else, and it's really fun. I like that. That's one of the things I like about single narrators is they can perform the entire book, and it's like a one-man show.
Mm-hmm. You know who's a voice actor that's got that ability is what's his name? He does Futurama and Billy West.
Right. Yeah,
he does
sure.
Fry. He does Dr. Zoidberg, and he does the Professor, and none of them sound the same.
No, he does a great job. He'd be a great narrator.
He's done many, many other cartoons.
Oh, neat.
I don't think there's that many crossovers between cartoon voice actors and audiobooks. I think there's, William DeFries is the voice of, who? Bob the Builder?
Bob the Builder, yeah.
That's basically about it as far as I
got a couple Wonder Audio titles that have Tara Platt, who does anime voiceover.
Okay.
And I also have a couple that I'm trying to get I had an issue with rights with. Has Yori Lowenthal, who does the voice of Ben 10 now.
Okay.
Cartoon Network, big show there.
Yeah.
And he's also on Naruto, which is a huge show. And but I have some issues with the rights on that, early publishing, and I made a couple mistakes there.
Okay.
Wasn't sure of my public domain laws there in that one.
Uh-oh. I actually got a question. Somebody was asking me, and I thought I'd save it for you. Since you're my go-to guy.
Do I have to preface this that I'm not a lawyer?
No. I haven't done any research on this, but I wanted to ask you. Bill Holweg was asking me if Clark Ashton Smith was all public domain. Do you have any idea? It's pretty old. I don't know if he's dead.
You can't tell because he published a lot of his stuff, like, for instance, in Weird Tales. And Weird Tales would sometimes buy the full rights to stories, and sometimes they didn't. They bought the full rights, then it would still be copyrighted because they renewed their copyright for all their magazines. So everything that was published in that magazine that they bought the full rights to would actually still be copyrighted. That's where things like Robert E. Howard, although he's been dead for over 75 years, people think it's public domain. Well, if Weird Tales bought the full rights and then they renewed those rights for the magazine, then they actually still own the copyright to some of, H.P. Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard, although I understand H.P. Lovecraft was known not to sell his full rights at a certain point in his career, so those you can safely assume are in public domain. It's all very complicated.
Well, I think we're pretty safe in that Robert E. Howard's been published by just about everybody, and he's dead.
Well,
he has no
Gutenberg, I don't think Gutenberg's putting their titles up because of that.
Yeah,
because it's their copyright law. But if you notice, the U.S. Gutenberg.
Yeah, you're right.
There are issues with that. Now, if you're a publisher in Australia, I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah.
To publish the Robert E. Howard books, but not in the United States. So
is that why we haven't seen any Wonder Audio Howard?
Yeah, it's partly.
Or is
it,
it, or is it that it's not your bag?
It's partly that. I mean, I grew up reading a lot of Conan, and I enjoyed it. But now when I go back to it, it seems like kind of slog through some of the descriptions, and sometimes, I don't know if you've noticed that.
It's not perfect.
No,
but there's lots of other stuff other than Conan too.
Right.
Lots of his
and
horror stuff.
The other reason is that there's not a real shortage of Howard out there. I wouldn't say. There's other publishers that are.
That's true. That's true.
So some of the stuff, there's stuff out there that I love that nobody ever put out on audiobook. So it's like, oh, I can't believe there's like no Sheckley out there. Things like that.
Yeah. Sure.
So
that's awesome. I'm glad. You seem to have really good taste. I mean, basically, I whenever I see something come out from Wonder Audio, that's really cool. I want to read that.
Well, thank you.
I don't know. You just modeled yourself after my brain or something. Compliment you is a compliment to me.
Well, thank you. You want to hear some of the titles I got coming out?
Yeah.
The Weapon Shops of Aisher by A.E. Van Vogt.
Is it Aisher or Isher?
Oh, we're pronouncing it Aisher.
Okay.
If it's Aisher.
Why Aisher? I would say Isher, like Fisher.
Sometimes you just need a judgment call on those things. Authors' names you can kind of find out, the common consensus how to pronounce. Other things like, A. Van Vogt is no longer with us, so I can't ask him personally.
Yeah.
But that's a novel that came out during the Golden Age.
Yeah.
And also,
series, isn't it? Series?
It was published. He would publish a series of stories and link them together.
Mm-hmm.
He called it a fixed up.
Fix up, yeah.
And most of it, you can tell that it all flows together, and there's a couple, like a prologue and an epilogue and stuff. It seems like they're from different stories that he worked in.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a novel. It's definitely a novel.
Cool.
That one's read by William Kuhn, which I got to get you some William Kuhn stuff.
Mm-hmm. No, I've heard him. He's good.
And let's see. Stefan Rudnicki does The Quest for St. Aquin by Anthony Boucher.
Oh, I have not read that.
It's a short story. It's like in the Science Fiction Hall of Fame.
Oh.
And, it's a very good story.
Well, it would
and
be.
Of course, Stefan, it's got a lot of gravitas, so Stefan. How do you pronounce his name?
Stefan, I think.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's Stefan.
Okay, I've been saying it right, I guess. But that's a very good... There's also a short story after it called They Bite by Anthony Boucher, which is more of a horror story. It was originally appeared in Unknown Worlds. And let's see.
What was that one called? They Bite. Okay.
It's like a semi-classic. It's been anthologized like 6 times or something. It's a favorite. And let's see. I got something called The Four-Sided Triangle by William F. Temple, which is kind of a semi-classic from the Golden Age by a British writer.
Okay.
I have a British narrator, Tim Rowe, to read that one. And let's see. I just assigned this novel to Mark Douglas Nelson. He'll like this story. 3 days later, he sends me the files and say, "Oh, here it is. It's done."
I swear to God, the guy has more audiobook in him than there is day in 20 hours in a day.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny because I just heard you guys talking about him on the last podcast. And then I assigned him a story, and he's like, "Well, I had 3 days off, so here it is." It's like,
wow.
That's amazing.
Got like the ultimate work ethic,
Yeah. And he gives you quality stuff too.
He sure does. Yeah, he's like it's amazing how quick he can do it, how good he does it. He also when he picks his own stuff, he picks good stuff.
Mhm.
I'm always amazed.
Wow.
Yeah, and you haven't heard any Mark Nelson, have you?
I have not.
Scott?
I'm going to send you, Scott, the link to the Statistalization.
Great.
That Robert Sheckley.
Mm-hmm.
I'll upload it somewhere and give you a link. So
I love Sheckley. I absolutely love that guy.
Or the Sheckley trilogy is really good too.
Uh-huh.
Which is stories, obviously, short stories.
Yeah, one of those is amazing. It's that's I first found it in the Robert Silverberg anthology. You know the one I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Rick?
I'm blanking right now.
It's like a Robert Silverberg How to Write Science Fiction.
101?
It was previously called Worlds of Wonder, I think it was called.
Yeah, it's Worlds of Wonder.
And then it was called Science Fiction 101.
Yeah, that's basically my favorite collection, because not only does he pick some amazing stories, he also writes a whole essay about why each story is so great. And it's not necessarily, how to write a story like this. It's more like, look at what this guy did. Look at what this guy did. It's amazing work. And I'm blanking on the name. It's called The Monsters, is it?
No, it's...
The Monsters by Robert Sheckley. I got the book right here.
The Monsters... Okay, The Monsters appeared in another... The A for Alien.
I'm sorry.
Which was read by... My God. Man, it's my own title. I had 3 different narrators in that one. And, it was Pat Bottini.
Maybe that's another reason why I liked it.
Yeah, he read that. The Sheckley trilogy.
Pat Bottino.
Okay. The Sheckley trilogy has Keep Your Shape, The Seventh Victim, and Specialist are the 3 stories in that.
Terrific.
Great.
We should get you to write the Sheckley page for our author section.
Yeah, well, as soon as I have time. Hey, one of the things we talked about that we didn't talk about is one of the things we talked about that we didn't talk about. That makes sense. One of the things we didn't talk about was that I'm
speaking chronologically, right?
Yes. As an editor at SFFaudio.com, I have the title of senior editor. So I
don't know about that. Maybe.
No, I was just going to drop a bomb on you guys.
Emeritus. I think you're emeritus, aren't you?
It'd be more applicable. I'm going to just bow out on the being an editor there.
Yeah, well, you haven't done any posting lately, so
might as well, right?
How about some reviews? Any reviews coming?
In my head, I got a lot of them.
Got to get them down in text, or I guess you could do.
No, it's just you prioritize things, and you guys know how much I love the site and everything, your site, but I just it's always gets to the back burner, and then I always got something more pressing to do. So I think it's time for me to step aside and say, I know I'm leaving you guys with a heavy workload, all the stuff I've been doing lately.
Well, I for one greatly appreciate your service. Thank you for stepping in and doing all that. That was great of you.
I believe you get to pardon someone on your way out, though, right? You better pardon yourself for getting us into Iraqi audiobooks and stuff like that.
Audiobooks for Gitmo. It's a new promotion we ought to do.
Oh.
Little Brother by Cory Doctorow. There you go.
There you go.
That won't fit.
I think
by the Bay.
That's actually that's a really good. Yeah, it's
I'm about ready to tackle that one again.
I listened to it. It's good.
Yep.
It's definitely good.
I just saw Cory last weekend.
Oh yeah?
At a science convention. Yeah. I recorded some panels and stuff he was on, and we were supposed to have an interview, but the programming kind of dropped me. It was a little visible.
Darn.
We should also mention your new presidential status. Now that you've gone on to lower and lesser things from SFF Audio.
that was the
or
the
bigger and better, I guess.
I had to. That's part of the give and take here.
All right.
So I had to drop something. Yes, Science Fiction Oral History Association is an organization that's been around since the 1970s. Lloyd Biggle, who was science fiction author.
Junior,
Lloyd
yes. Biggle Jr.?
Yes. He wrote the Toonsmith and Orson Scott Card's a big fan of Lloyd Biggle Jr. He was in the organization for many years and was the main impetus behind it. But he wanted to have a historical record of science fiction conventions mainly, of the readings and panel discussions and speeches. And so they started back in the 70s on reel-to-reel and cassettes and stuff. And the organization have kind of laid low for a while, and then it came on to fallow times where like a past president has passed away. I hope that's not a jinx or something. Hope it's not a curse. And so, they were just sitting in someone's basement for the longest time, and it kind of got resurrected a few years ago. And the recent president just had to step down because of, I live in the Detroit area, and the job market is, as it is elsewhere in the country, but particularly here, is terrible. And she had to move out of town, and she just decided it was time to step down. So they asked who would be the president, among the board, and I'm just kind of a volunteer there. And it was one of those like Three Stooges things where they asked for a volunteer to step forward. Everybody else stepped back, and I was still standing there. But no, really, I'm glad to do it. It was just the time, it's like, hey, I'll do this, but you realize, I got a lot of things on my plate right now. But the idea of the organization was to preserve the history of the recordings of, all these different concepts of just science fiction writers talking, and the things you hear at conventions can be really fascinating and well worthwhile. And their main concern at first was to send these out to universities, these recordings to universities for an archive, so researchers could access them. And of course, this is before the internet and the web and everything back then. So to bring it into the 21st century, we have a goal of setting up a website. There is a website at SFFaudio, Science Fiction Oral History Association.org, but it's just mainly just text up there right now. And my thing was, hey, let's bring this into the 21st century. Let's put it on the web so everybody can hear it. Now, there are some issues with rights and stuff, so we can't just release everybody's recordings all at once. But most authors and estates of authors are really cool about this. You just approach them and they say, yeah, sure, go ahead and use it. Because not only is it the historical value, obviously it's a happy byproduct is promoting the author's books and stuff. So
that's terrific.
So right now we're looking for volunteers, because I obviously can't do it alone, and we got a few people on the board, but we really need a lot more volunteers. I'd like to see a community grow, an online community, kind of like a Wikipedia type community, open to the people to do the recordings, get the permissions, do all kinds of webmaster. Hey, Scott. Hey. And
well, you're talking me into it. I mean, it seems very worthwhile to me.
And Scott, you go to a lot of conventions too, so
no, not a lot. I go to the local ones.
I've been to
but
one.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good though. If you just go to the local, well, which one did you go to, Jesse?
Worldcon 2006.
If you're going to go to one, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Worldcon 2009. What do you think?
It's in
Montreal.
It's in your country.
That's why I can go to it. I don't have to get my passport renewed.
Well, I'm thinking of going myself, but I don't know if I can swing it.
Well, think about it.
Yeah.
Not that far from you.
But one thing, we're talking with the con organizers up there about trying to get as much recorded as we can at the Worldcon.
That'd be great.
But I would love to see, one of my personal goals is to see like most of the panels and most of the cons actually be on the site.
Absolutely.
Why not?
They should be.
As far as, people having portable recording devices, they're out there, people have them. And it's a great way to meet authors and just open up conversation as to, hey, can I record this? Hey, can you look at this form to sign? We're just having it rewritten into the release form to have like the Creative Commons language in there to release them. So it's a great way. I mean, I went to a con and I get to smooth with the authors a little easier, It's like, and I can throw that old president. Hey, I'm president. With a tongue-in-cheek, of course.
That's right. Well, that's great. I think that's terrific. That is a
if anybody's
worthwhile
interested in
thing.
You guys can contact me at timeshowhost@gmail.com, or you can follow the links at the science fiction oral history website, which is SFFaudio.org.
I'm just looking at the recent acquisitions there. It says Stephen H. Silver donated a CD of MP3s of the guest of honor speeches from 1965, 1968, 1979, 2000, and 2004. I guess this is for all the Worldcons, is that right?
Yes. In fact, I think he's wrong on the 68. I think it was 1970. But that's the one that I put on the Time Traveler show.
Right.
With Robert Silverberg does the guest of honor speech.
That was awesome.
That's how I got that. And then I got to email Robert Silverberg and, exchange emails with him, which is, in my nerdy way, kind of exciting to me.
Totally nerdy and totally cool.
You bet.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very polite.
Terrific.
Calls me Mr. Jackson.
Yeah.
So when you write back, you just can't go, "Hey, Bobby, thanks a lot."
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Bob. That's awesome. I think this is a great idea, and I also
plus,
think there should be a podcast.
I was going to go there. We are talking about a podcast, and I'm talking. There's other podcasters listening to this and want to be podcasters. I'm thinking of having like a rotating host that comes in and does a few shows, and maybe someone else comes in and just intros and outros to these recordings, and they can plug their own podcast or whatever. Hey, you guys do a podcast.
Yeah.
How would you like to?
I'm definitely in on that. That would be fantastic fun.
So basically what you're saying is the way it would work is somebody else records it, you podcast it?
Well, they would have their own the SFFaudio organization would have its own podcast. That's
Right.
the podcast.
But they'd have guest
You guys-
hosts.
They would have guest hosts, right? So it would have its own feed. And if you guys want to throw it in your, if people want to throw it in their own feed, I have no problem with that, of course. It'll be released under Creative Commons.
Yeah.
Well, there's definitely some goodness in there, and
That's
I think
neat.
that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's a wonderful idea.
Right now, I'm just researching some of the different hosting companies, so I'm pretty much ready to go on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I want to I think I would just want to throw up a WordPress type space for first, anyways. We're talking about having like a wiki in the background for members to upload and,
I've been wondering about a wiki that plugs into WordPress, but I haven't seen one.
Yeah, I think that we're going to, that'll be a separate kind of module thing to the website. Hey, I wanted to mention a couple titles I've listened to lately that I didn't write reviews for.
Yeah, please do.
Tobias Backel's Sly Mongoose.
Oh.
Really good. Jonathan Davis.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Jonathan Davis does it.
Yeah, he's one of the best narrators.
I guess it's part of his. It's in the same universe as two previous novels to this one, but it doesn't matter. I never read those, and I totally got into this.
Is that an Audible Frontiers title?
Yeah. No, Macmillan.
Macmillan. Okay. Was that a hard copy or through Audible?
Audible is where I got it from.
Yeah, I think it's an Audible exclusive, even if it's not a...
Oh, that could be. It's really good sense of wonder, fun science fiction, but really well written. It's never clunky at all. Good writing with good sense of wonder values, good adventure, good characters.
So what is the setting? You say it's a second novel. I haven't read any.
It's a third novel, but this one's. But the other two are different settings. Same universe, different characters for the most part.
Yeah, you don't have to read the other stuff.
It's
right?
floating. Right. There's this planet that has. It's kind of like Venus, comparable to Venus, I guess. Poisonous gas surface, but if you float like 100,000 feet in the air, they have these floating cities. And the one kid, this one city has a really poor infrastructure. It's kind of, things are going bad there. And this 14-year-old kid goes like in this deep sea diving suit to the surface to get an element they absolutely have to have, which escapes me now why they had to go down there. Meanwhile, there's a lot of things going on. There's another guy who falls through the atmosphere. He's on the ship, you find out, and the crew gets taken over by an alien life form that turns everybody into zombies. So we got zombies. So that's a good thing going for it. But none of it's tongue in cheek. It's all done very seriously. And this guy escapes the ship, and he falls through the atmosphere in the suit, and he hits the city. And there's damage done and everything, and this guy's pretty messed up, but he's kind of transhuman, he can repair parts of his bodies and stuff, and he can at least survive. Meanwhile, these zombies are starting to take over this planet. And there's an alien on the surface down below that's kind of mysterious. We don't know what's going on down there. So there's a lot of different elements, and they all work together. I'm not going to, try to cover too much of the plot, but it's
sounds good.
It's excellent. Yeah, it's just excellent.
Sounds original.
Another one I just read was, I mentioned a minute ago, Little Brother by Cory Doctorow, which is a subversive book in a good way. Mm-hmm. It's I asked him about. Well, I have to tell you a little bit about it. It takes place in the near future. He's in San Francisco. This kid of 18, I believe, and there is a terrorist bombing, and the NSA, is that right? National Security Agency, NSA.
Yeah,
it's the government.
No, I think it was the Homeland Security, wasn't it?
Okay, yeah.
DHS.
Department of Homeland Security. Yeah, DHS comes in and just kind of grabs a bunch of suspicious people, and this kid is one of them. And he gets put in a prison in solitary, and they infiltrate him. But anyways, eventually he's released, and it's kind of his battle back against the organization because they're stomping all over the Bill of Rights and all that stuff. So if you're politically very conservative, it might be kind of upsetting. If you've just been horrified with the way the country's been run in states here, you'll find it refreshing. But it was well read, and it's a good book. It's got sometimes Cory Doctorow's got another style. A lot of his science fiction is very tech heavy, cyberpunkish, hard to. Sometimes it gets so dense with stuff that you kind of lose the human element, where this book is totally not that way at all. It was published as a YA novel.
What did you think of the info dumping that happens in it?
I thought that was... It kind of fit the book.
Yeah.
I mean, the book is there to kind of educate you about this side of the story. So I did think that they did seem like info dumps in a way, but since it was done in first person, it was the kid saying it from, what he was thinking, I thought it worked pretty well.
I thought it was the classic awesome info dump, like not
trying to hide it.
Not trying to hide it, not trying to pretend like it's not necessary, saying, listen, some really sort of essay-style writing, explaining a complex idea in a way that isn't stupid dialogue. Because really, that's the other choice is, as you well know, Jim, we are flying in this spaceship that can only go 1/4 of the speed of light. That's not the way to tell a story.
Right.
Because it doesn't give you good information quick. And I guess it's all told first person, right? So,
yes.
I thought it was really well done, the info dumping, and I think that it sort of gets a bad rap because of that. I'm not saying this book does, but just info dumping in general. What do you think on the info dumping situation?
Personally, I like you said, I think it worked. I mean, it especially in a YA novel, it's really trying to tell you something. I mean, it is trying to instruct you, and it never got to be. Sometimes I've read Heinlein, where a juvenile Heinlein novel where he's talking about star astrogation and stuff, and it's like a science lesson, and he's teaching the kids or something, and it's like, oh my God, what's the next section?
Wait, I didn't bring my slide rule.
Yeah, get your slide rule out and set it to 0. Yeah, it was. I didn't get that sense from it. It was always I guess it was interesting info dumping. Maybe that's the difference.
It could be. I think Cory Doctorow is very good at writing informative essays in general. If you've read some of his essays, and this is it's like a plot wrapped around a whole bunch of informative essays. And I think of it more in that way than a regular novel. It's more like, here's a whole bunch of ideas about things that are happening now in our culture, and I'll just set it a couple years in the future and see if I can make a story out of it. And I think he did. I think he's it's a comment on our society. It's not just a slick adventure.
Right. And it does have a good human element. I mean, you are interested in the characters.
Yep.
You're interested in them and his relationships and stuff.
What did you think of the narrator?
I thought he was good. I mean, he sounded... Hayward?
Hayborn, yeah.
Yeah, I have it in front of me. Yeah, he was good. I mean, I thought he sounded like an 18-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Speaking kind of from his heart. I mean, I thought it worked good. I asked Corey about it at the con, and he said, yeah, he kind of... He wasn't enthusiastic about it. He said, yeah, I thought he did a good reading, but I think authors sometimes, they hear their own voice in their head. So it's always a little hard adjustment when they hear another narrator do their own work.
I think he did a much better job than Corey could have done.
Oh,
Corey's an okay reader. I think he's better, speaker than he is a narrator.
Right. He reads a little fast, for one.
Yeah, and also he doesn't do characterization very well.
Right.
He's not an actor.
Right.
Yeah, I think I was.
So those are two recent books that I didn't write a review for. So there they are. Those are my reviews.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yep.
You're welcome.
All right.
Great.
You guys haven't done a Little Brother review, have you?
I just posted a link to you.
Yeah, Jesse did one a long while back.
Oh, okay.
June 18th. I guess that was last year.
Yep.
Do you see it? The link there, Rick?
Yep, I see it.
Gotta essential.
Oh, okay, good.
And I quoted one of the info dumps from the book. It shows it's like seven paragraphs, something like that.
Yeah.
But it's really informative. I think it's a great way to tell a story. I'm down on people who don't like it.
Well,
it can't be done wrong, but
I asked him how's the feedback been? Has he had any adverse responses to it, that people really hated it or not?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, no, not really. A few people on Amazon, which you're always going to get. You're always going to get some negative reviews on Amazon that thought he was just, a communist or something. And
yeah, he is a communist, but that has nothing to do with it.
Right.
Oh, well, his parents were communists, but no, seriously. But yeah.
So yeah, I kind of wondered. It had some sex in it too, which kind of surprised me for a YA novel. It had more sex in it than I've I don't read a ton of YA, but it had more sex in it than I was expecting. I thought that was like taboo totally for. Terrorism's okay, but no sex, people.
Yeah, violence is okay. Swearing's not okay, but yeah. I think we forget that a lot of older stories do have that. But
what's that? Sex?
Yeah, they do. They just.
Well, not YA though.
No, I think that you can forget that some does. It's just not as common. I mean, if we're going by YA Heinlein doesn't. Right? He never talks about sex, except when he's talking all about sex, right? And even then, he's mostly talking about, other stuff around it. Yeah, his YA stuff doesn't have it. But Heinlein's not everybody. Heinlein had a weird perspective. I think there is some other stuff out there. I'm not recalling any, but I think there must be some.
Yeah, there's a lot of contemporary YA that is well regarded that I've never, read, so... Scott Westerfeld's name keeps coming up at these cons. I'm going to have to check out some of his stuff.
Yeah, what did he write?
The Uglies series?
Yeah, Uglies and Pretties and Extras.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I'm going to sample his stuff.
I don't like the distinction between, calling something YA versus something else. I think YA just means it's really accessible. It's going to be a good introduction. But I don't think it's necessarily, should be only a special genre unto itself.
Well, it's a
way. Yeah, it's a way for parents to be able to say, okay, yeah, this is at this kid's level of, theme as well. I've got to, read Little Brother. And to find out if, you're talking about sexual content and stuff, that's disturbing in some of the YA. I think it's disingenuous to put a YA label on something that has adult themes in it.
Well, I have to say, it's not heavy. The sex is light, but still for a YA, I mean, he does have, like, sex in the book. It's not described graphically or anything.
Sure,
unfortunately,
sure.
But
You bet.
Yeah, I did a review of A Case of Conscience this week.
I saw that. That's one of those I've never gotten around to reading.
Yeah, A Case of Conscience and Zombies. That's what that'll turn you into a reader. I found it really good in the first half, and sort of less good in the second half. If they had reversed the order, it would have been better. But it's really two separate novellas that were, one following the other. But when I sort of changed my mind while I was writing it, I was thinking about what my disappointments were in it, and it basically was, that it didn't. The revelations of the first book were better than the first half were better than the second half, but I still give it a essential because I think the first half works so well on its own. You could just stop halfway through. It has that, surprise. It's very very well thought out, and it's got a lot of deep thinking going on inside a certain culture. Like, basically it's a story of a Jesuit on an alien planet, and he's got to make a judgment about the people there based on whether he thinks they have souls or not. And I thought that was a really good idea, and I think there's been a bit more of that, like The Sparrow. What's Mary Doria Russell?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't read that, but I have a feeling that that's sort of a spiritual successor to A Case of Conscience. And I've heard good things about it. Have you read that, Scott?
I haven't read it, I have it here on my shelf, not on audio, but I had the audiobook a while back. I found a copy on eBay, and it was one of those book cassettes from Brilliance.
Oh,
and it wasn't working. I'd play it in whatever player I had. I put it in a player, and I couldn't get just the left channel. I mean, do you know what I'm saying? Do you remember those book cassettes?
I hated those.
Anyway, it wasn't working. It was bleeding through. So, I know I've listened to ones like that before. I used to with my Walkman. What I would do with those is put them in there and then just put one headphone in. And then leave the other one out. But I would get bleed through. I could hear two narrations going on at the same time. So,
That's not good.
Yeah, so I couldn't listen to it.
Well, I'm going to see if I can find a digital copy on Audible or something, because I thought it was really impressive. Just, tackling very science fictional ideas from a religious perspective, taking that seriously. In the second half of the book, we've got a situation where we're seeing the results of a decision in the first half, and eventually our protagonist goes to visit. He's back on Earth, and he has to go to the Pope because he's committed a heresy. And the Pope, you're expecting something, and then the Pope suggests something that is absolutely, should have been obvious in the first half of the novel, and you say, "Oh yeah, of course." And then the ending gives you, sort of this ambiguity that leaves you unsatisfied in a way that makes you very satisfied. It's really hard to talk about this novel without giving spoilers. And a lot of even like Wikipedia's got spoilers. Most reviews seem to spoil the book in a way, at least a little bit. So I had a bit of a trouble explaining the story without that. But it's also got a big thing on Finnegan's Wake. A big part of the story. The story starts with a reading from Finnegan's Wake, the James Joyce novel, and he was talking about in the beginning of the book, he's talking about how the main character was talking about how this was a heresy, and I couldn't understand what that meant. Like there's a heresy in this book. Have you heard anything about that, Scott?
Yeah, I remember hearing a lecture about it, but I read this so long ago that I can't tell you what that was. But
Finnegan's Wake or Case of Conscience?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I tried to find it online. I couldn't find much in the way of there's a lot on the internet about both books, but not discussion of how Finnegan's Wake has a special place in the Vatican Library of Bad Books or something like that.
Huh. Have you ever heard anything about Arthur C. Clarke, The Star? Because that one seems like it would be on that list.
Yeah,
too.
that should be on that list too, in a way. Although I don't know. I think a lot of Christians like that one too.
Yeah, I like it. It's it's a good book or a good story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
I remember you asked, what was your, I don't know if it was the most influential story or whatever.
Yeah.
And you said it was the Cold Equations.
Yeah.
For you, and for me it was The Star.
Yeah.
And,
I'm saying what's the story that, if you were to say, what really blew your mind and, sort of shows what kind of story you like.
Uh-huh.
Yours is The Star, and mine was Cold Equations. What about you, Rick? What if you were to?
I was waiting for that question.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd actually go with The Time Machine, H.G. Wells.
Mm. Showing the big range of.
Said, hey, this is science fiction. This is he nailed it with his first story.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's the way to go.
You bet.
I don't like the fact that mine's really badly written. Cold Equations is a really badly written story. But I'm more for it's the idea. I can suffer through a bad story if it's got a badly written story if it's got an idea that blows my mind.
Yeah, it's a great story.
It is.
I think Time Machine and The Star are both very well written. So you guys got that going for you, and Time Machine's it's such a groundbreaker.
Yeah.
The Star is such a
it's a safe bet when I throw that one out there.
I don't.
What are you thinking?
Well, I think a lot of people would, a lot of science fiction writers would say, especially early ones would say that's the one, the one that blew them away.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I just sent you guys a link to Penguicon.
Mm-hmm.
On to me, and I just brought it. I just wanted to bring it up because I'm going to be there, and I just talked to the con chair. It sounds like I'll be on some of the panels and stuff.
Cool.
And hopefully, do you see the literary guest of honor? It's about 4 names over there.
Celebrities, events, features. Where are we?
Right at the top, it says guests of honor include Will Wheaton and Spider Robinson.
Oh, I see.
All right.
Hack of honor is Candy Fab. What's a hack of honor? Oh, like a.
This is the open. This is the open source. So it'd be like a computer hack.
Nifty
guess.
This
is the science fiction / open source convention.
That is awesome. That's like a dream right there. Well, you got Stephen Ely there too.
Yep. We're going to be hopefully kind of doing a podcast track there.
That's awesome.
I just got to talk with the con chair at that last convention I went to, and he's like really enthusiastic. So should be a great con. So come on out, guys.
Oh man, I'd love to. Romulus, Michigan.
Yeah,
you have to sneak me into the country.
Detroit Metro Airport.
Oh, is that what that is? Okay.
Yeah, it's right by Detroit. That's where Detroit Metro Airport is, Romulus.
Oh man, that'd be fun. Gotta like Spider Robinson.
Buddy. Can't make it.
I'm hoping to do a live time traveler show with Spider.
Oh, that would be cool.
Good. He's probably gonna. He's a podcasting guy himself. Have you heard his podcast?
Oh yes. Oh man. The readings he does are great.
He gets some great stories.
He's a terrific narrator. I put him and him and Neil Gaiman and Harlan Ellison are three authors who can really be great narrators, who really are great narrators.
That's a great list, Scott.
Yeah.
That'd be my first three. I would come to mind too.
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
Yeah, he did that one Fred Pohl story.
Mm-hmm.
I know you did a write-up, something about it. On,
the Persistence of Vision? Is that the one?
That's John Varley. That was great.
Oh. What's the one you're thinking of?
Oh, it's where the aliens take over the guy's mind and can control him, and he only has brief respites from that to live his life.
Passengers? Is that what it's called?
No, that's a Silverberg story. I can't remember the title by name, but it was really, really modern and upsetting and sexual and
what's the one you're thinking of?
Fred Pohl wrote it. That's all I can tell you.
Oh, that's not. That's
the.
I know the one you mean. That's
It's Fighting on the Web podcast.
Yeah. It's like so short. It's a really short one. God.
That one should be. You know how you do those 3-5. What's
5 pre-favorites? Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I've got one written up, and I just have 4 titles. So you know what? I should add that in. You're right. I'm trying to remember the name of that. Persistence of Vision. Options. Not that one.
Seems like it was a few words.
Okay, here it is. I've got it. It's called Day Million, or We Purchase People.
We Purchase People is the one.
Ah, okay.
We Purchase People.
I think Day Million is one of those stories that people could choose as a favorite defining story.
Right.
It's so short. It says so much.
Short. Yeah, that's short.
It says so much in such a short period of time, and it does what all good science fiction does. It sort of destroys your senses of what's possible. I think I keep talking about it on this podcast about this book I'm reading called Mistakes Were Made But Not By Me. And one of the things it talks about is how people get into the people who get into certain fields of professions sometimes believe that their skills are greater than they actually are. So, for example, it talks about how police often will be convinced that they are very good at telling whether someone is lying or not. And in interrogations, they will convince themselves that they know when someone's lying, when in fact their chances of being right are no greater than chance. And what it is they've become so experienced, and they've had so much training, and they thought that training was scientifically based. So when they are wrong, they can't believe that they could be wrong. When the evidence confronts them against what they believe, they just reject that evidence. And what it was saying is basically the scientific method and science is a form of arrogance control. It prevents you from believing in things that are outside of your experience, outside of your worldview. And I think that's one of the things that science fiction is really good at is checking what you believe to be possible by constantly throwing at you plausible but unreal or counterfactual evidence. And so a story like Day Million is like just it's a story about a guy who's not really a guy. What? It's
kind of a transhuman type story.
Absolutely. It's absolutely transhuman.
Before you say a term transhuman, I think.
It's trans everything.
Yeah.
I'm really impressed by it.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. We purchase people is also very it's breaking boundaries and such. I would say that's not a YA story. I was freaked out by that story.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of those that make you feel uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
In a good way, though.
This has been the SFFaudio Podcast. Please join us at www.sffaudio.com.